A storm was brewing in the peaceful suburban community long before a single drop of rain ever touched the ground. This wasn't a weather forecast, but the result of an outrageous homeowners association fine for owning too much water. One small decision, one hidden reservoir, and one woman's relentless control would soon cascade into a flood of consequences that no one could stop. Stay tuned, because this is a story you will not forget. Before we dive into the unfolding chaos of fines, revenge, and water, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss stories like this. Hit that like button to show your support for people standing up to HOA overreach. Now, let's go straight into this unbelievable saga. When I first moved into the neighborhood, the house was a modest lakeside property with a private pond connected to an old dam system built decades ago. The previous owner had left me all the rights to manage the water levels, and I took great care of it. It was my retreat, a place for reflection and quiet evenings. But the HOA, led by a woman named Carol, who had a reputation for nitpicking every small infraction, saw it as an opportunity to flex control. They began by sending letters questioning my excessive use of natural resources, accusing me of violating vague water management clauses buried deep in the community bylaws. When I pointed out that the dam predated the HOA, their tone shifted to intimidation. A fine arrived, thousands of dollars for owning too much water, a charge as absurd as it was enraging. This wasn't about water at all, it was about power. As weeks passed, the HOA escalated. They sent inspectors to my property, measuring the pond and photographing the dam like it was a crime scene. Neighbors whispered about how Carol was planning a grand garden party on her property near the creek below my dam, completely unaware of how her actions were pushing me to the brink. What started as mild frustration turned into late nights researching property rights, legal precedents, and hydrology. The more I read, the clearer it became. My rights to the dam and the water were ironclad. But the HOA kept piling on threats, hinting they could drain my pond without my permission. Their arrogance was staggering. The final straw came when a certified letter arrived stating that if I didn't pay the fine within 10 days, they would pursue legal action and potentially confiscate excess water. It was a phrase so ridiculous that I laughed until I nearly cried. And that's when the plan started to form. I wouldn't fight them with words or lawsuits. I'd fight them with the very thing they feared, water itself. This is where everything began to shift. By the time the garden party invitations went out, I had been preparing for weeks. Carol's estate sat directly downstream from my dam, her backyard landscaped like a magazine spread. Pergolas, white tents, rows of imported roses, all perched on low ground beside the creek. She bragged openly about how her party would outshine the HOA gala. Meanwhile, I spent my evenings quietly adjusting the sluice gates, calculating flow rates, and making sure everything I did was within my legal rights. After all, maintaining the dam was my responsibility. I had never opened the floodgates fully before, but spring rains had swelled the reservoir to a level not seen in years. As the party day approached, I watched Carol strut around inspecting caterers and decorators, completely unaware that the ground beneath her was saturated from weeks of drizzle and runoff. I wasn't aiming to destroy her property. I simply wanted to make a point that nature isn't something you can fine into submission. The morning of the party, the HOA president sent me another smug email demanding I lower my water levels to avoid spillage onto HOA common land. That was my final push. With a steady hand, I opened the gates just enough to release the excess water, a perfectly lawful act of dam management. It started as a gentle rush, the creek rising inch by inch. By mid-afternoon, as guests arrived in pastel dresses and suits, the water had transformed into a surging stream that licked at the edges of her manicured lawn. From my porch, I could hear distant laughter turning into shouts as tables tilted and decorations floated away. The dam roared like a living thing, but still within safe limits. I documented everything, timestamps, weather reports, photos of the gauges. This wasn't revenge for the sake of it. It was my right as the dam keeper. By sunset, the once perfect garden had become a muddy mess, the roses uprooted and the tents collapsing. The HOA's power queen had just been humbled by the very element she tried to control. But this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of the fallout. The following days were a blur of accusations, emergency meetings, and panicked emails from HOA board members. They demanded explanations, alleging that I had intentionally flooded Carol's party. I responded with measured calm, presenting my evidence. The rains, the legal maintenance logs, the absurdity of the excess water fine. Neighbors began taking sides. Some were furious at Carol for provoking me. Others were terrified that the HOA's power might backfire on them next. News of the incident spread beyond our neighborhood, morphing into a local headline about a suburban dam dispute. Reporters called, legal experts chimed in online, and soon everyone had an opinion about whether I was a villain or a hero. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves from Carol, claiming the fine had been her initiative alone. Yet Carol doubled down, filing a complaint with the county and threatening to sue me personally. I spent long evenings with my attorney, who confirmed what I already knew. I had acted entirely within my rights. The County Water Commission even praised my careful maintenance of the dam. This public support emboldened me. I began openly discussing the HOA's overreach at community forums, revealing years of ridiculous fines and secretive rule changes. People started to question everything. Carol's once loyal allies on the board quietly resigned, citing stress and family obligations. The more she pushed, the more isolated she became. For the first time, I felt the tide turning, not just for me, but for everyone trapped under the HOA's thumb. Yet Carol wasn't finished. She planned one final move, and I could sense it coming. Her last stand came in the form of a lawsuit and a smear campaign. She claimed I had endangered lives by releasing water recklessly, and sought damages for her destroyed party and landscaping. But the case fell apart almost immediately. County engineers testified that my actions had prevented a potential overflow disaster and that her party site had been chosen irresponsibly on low-lying land. Social media users mocked her claim of owning too much water, turning it into memes. The HOA's credibility collapsed under the spotlight. In a stunning turn, the county launched an investigation into the HOA itself, citing misuse of funds and discriminatory enforcement of rules. Carol resigned from her position in disgrace, her once perfect garden now a symbol of overreach and arrogance. I watched from my porch as contractors dismantled the last of her ruined pergolas, the creek flowing quietly once more. It wasn't triumph I felt, but relief. The absurd fine was rescinded, the HOA issued a public apology, and new elections were held for the board. I didn't run for a seat, I'd had enough of politics. Instead, I joined a neighborhood committee to rewrite the bylaws, ensuring no one could ever be fined for owning too much water again. The dam stood as it always had, a quiet reminder of resilience and balance. What began as an attempt to control me had ended up reshaping the entire community, and as the next spring rains arrived, I kept the floodgates steady, knowing full well that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't with anger or destruction, but with calm, calculated action that lets the truth flow like water. If you enjoyed this story and want more unbelievable tales of HOA drama and everyday people fighting back, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Drop a like if you think homeowners should stand up to unfair rules, and share this story with someone who loves a good twist.